Since doing the top 10 giant movie monsters video for Halloween a couple of years ago, I pretty much knew that I was going to be doing another video like it, but this one dedicated to the monsters slash kaiju of the Godzilla franchise. Starting from 1955 and continuing all the way to the present, Godzilla has faced an entire collection of weird but impressive looking beasts. Some started off as a rival, but would later become an ally to the king, and others continue to challenge him and attempt to take his throne. Now there have been so many monsters over the years that it wasn't easy to choose from. Well, some I knew that I would be included, but others it took a while for me to think of which kaiju are the most popular with me, since I love nearly all of them. However, after a lot of thinking, I have selected on which monsters are my favourites, and these are the ones that I want to talk about. So without further ado, this is Dragonzilla's Top 10 Godzilla Monsters / Kaiju. Number 10. Mando. Not every kaiju in their debut films starred alongside Godzilla. Some actually appeared in their own individual movie that was produced by Toho, and this is one of them. The sea dragon known as Mando first originated in 1963's Atragon, where he was a guardian to the Kingdom of Mu. And when you think of Atragon, the first thing that will come to mind will be the iconic scene where he famously wraps his serpent-like body around the Gotengo, a move that he would repeat 44 years later in Godzilla Final Wars. He returned a few years after Atragon in Destroy All Monsters, where he was one of the residents on Monsterland, but this time his horns and whiskers were removed, giving him a snake-like appearance. He went under alien mind control by the Helax and attacked London off-screen, but he later came back to join Godzilla, Mothra and Rodan. However, although he was there at Mount Fuji, he did not take part in the battle to defeat King Ghidorah. Interestingly, there was a deleted scene in the movie where Godzilla attacks Mando, but I don't really remember why it was cut. It was either because the two kaiju were meant to be under mind control, or the fight looked too unrealistic. Not counting stock footage, Destroy All Monsters was Mando's last appearance, until Godzilla Final Wars where he obtained his horns and whiskers, and he once again battled the Gotengo, which was a reference to Atragon. In 2021, Mando was given a redesign, looking like a cross between a catfish and a sea serpent, for the Netflix series Godzilla Singular Point. Despite not being a very popular kaiju, Mando is still a cool looking monster. And because I'm a big fan of dragons, then of course the Guardian of Mu would be on this list. Number 9. Megalon. When you think of insect gods from the franchise, the first one that will come to mind will be Mothra, but she isn't the only insect kaiju who is seen as a god. Enter Megalon, the beetle god from the Kingdom of Seatopia. However, unlike Mothra who is divine, Megalon was a very dim-witted monster, and wasn't exactly the brightest kaiju ever. Whether he's got a brain or not, that remains a mystery. He's kind of similar to Gigan, except he has drills instead of hooks, and he comes from a civilization that's beneath the Earth's surface. So basically, he's a monster from the center of the Earth if you like. He was summoned by the Seatopians to wipe out humanity due to all the nuclear tests. And once on the surface, he was led by the robot Jet Jaguar to cause mayhem. However, when Jet Jaguar was under human control again, and said to go and get Godzilla, Megalon threw a temper tantrum. I'm not making that up, he really did. And he's meant to be a gadget god of all things. He takes on Jet Jaguar in the first part of the battle, and then is joined by Gigan where both monsters beat up the robot, until Godzilla arrived on the scene. Megalon has only appeared in one movie at the time this video has been made, but the character has appeared in multiple forms of media, such as video games, comic books, and a couple of times in the novelizations to the Baragon trilogy, Godzilla Monster Apocalypse, and Project Mecha Godzilla. But unlike Jet Jaguar, Megalon did not return for Godzilla Singular Point. However, he was at least referenced in the Kumonga creatures. Number 8. Baragon. Baragon may look adorable, but you know what they say, looks can be deceiving. He is a survivor from the era of the dinosaurs, the Mesozoic, and he can burrow underground, hence why he escaped the KT mass extinction that occurred at the end of the late Cretaceous period approximately 65 million years ago. Baragon's debut was Frankenstein Conquers the World, aka Frankenstein vs. Baragon. Yes, his first appearance was in a Frankenstein movie, and not a Godzilla film. But he didn't fight the Frankenstein monster from the Universal franchise, but a different creature that looked more like a caveman. He is such a great leaper and could enter the Monster Olympics with a capability like that, and had the ability to breathe a fire ray similar to Godzilla's atomic breath. And despite his large ears making him look cute, well, according to the old Toho Monsters book, they can actually shield his eyes while he burrows underground. Baragon's second appearance was in Destroy All Monsters, where he was supposed to invade Paris, a role that was originally written for Maguma. But due to the suit's heavy use as multiple kaiju in the Ultraman franchise, the suit itself, although it had changed back to Baragon, but with a new head, the ears were kinda stiff, and thus he was replaced by Gorosaurus, who was still credited as Baragon, probably due to an error. However, he did make a little cameo in the movie. But this wouldn't be the end for the subterranean dinosaur, as he returned many years later as a Guardian monster in 2001's Godzilla, Mothra and King Ghidorah Giant Monsters All Out Attack, or GMK for short. I should also point out that in the Gamera franchise, there's a character named Baragon, who although is a completely different beast, and is a giant lizard who can shoot rainbows from his back, his name is spelt in the same way as Baragon, but with a U between the R and G. However, aside from the names and the horns, the two kaiju are completely different monsters and have no connection to each other. Number 7. Destroyer. Imagine if a crustacean took the form of the devil, then you would get the kaiju equivalent of the Antichrist, Destroyer. And despite resembling the devil, minus the pitchfork, the kaiju actually started off as microscopic organisms from the Precambrian period that were revived by the Oxygen Destroyer, the weapon that slayed the original Gojira back in 1954. As the microforms continued to feed, they grew until they eventually became the juvenile forms, but as soon as they came into contact with the squad team, they combined together and evolved into the aggregate form, and would later on merge into the flying form. However, after Burning Godzilla reunited with his son, the final/perfect form of Destroyer appeared from an eruption of fire. He murdered Godzilla Jr. by dropping him from a great height into a stadium, and he attempted to kill the king while he was on the brink of destruction. Out of all the forms of the kaiju, I think the perfect would be my favourite, because like King Ghidorah, this monster also looks the part for Bryn in Armageddon, and despite his popularity, Destroyer has so far been a one-off beast. But he has appeared in the comic books and video games, and he is one of Toho's many kaiju who fans want to see make a return to the Monsterverse, myself included. However, his goal was to destroy Godzilla, since his microforms were mutated by the Oxygen Destroyer, and if he ever returned only to be defeated by Godzilla, then his purpose would be thrown out the window, so maybe it's best that he remains as a one-off titan. Number 6. Varan. Another obscure monster who started his own movie, then made a brief cameo in a Godzilla film. Out of all of Toho's kaiju, Varan is the most unique, and although he is a reptile, he's described as a flying squirrel monster, and as far as I know, his roar is a modified Godzilla roar, which was also reused for Baragon in the Showa period, Gorosaurus, a few kaiju in the Ultraman series, and it was even used for Megalon, but heavily modified. In his debut film, Varan was feared and worshipped by native villagers, and was revered as Baragon. But as usual, like most movie monsters of the 50s, breaks loose and goes on the rampage. Varan returned as a cameo in Destroy All Monsters. He was originally going to have a bigger part in the Battle of Mount Fuji to take down King Ghidorah, but the suit unfortunately by this point had badly deteriorated to the point that it couldn't be used anymore, so a small flying prop of him was made instead to fill in the niche. Varan is very well known in the kaiju community due to his many movies that were planned but never saw the light of day, such as The Return of King Ghidorah, which would eventually become Godzilla vs. Gigan. He was going to be the villain for the finale for the Heisei period, titled Godzilla vs. Giant Monster Varan, where he would have been a lot bigger and the bringer of Doomsday, to which that movie would eventually become Godzilla vs. Destroyer. And most famously, Varan was going to be in GMK, but instead of Mothra and King Ghidorah as the Guardians, it was originally going to be Varan and Anguirus with Baragon, and the title to that movie would have been called, get ready for this, Godzilla x Varan, Baragon and Anguirus, Giant Monsters All Out Attack. Such a shame that both him and Anguirus were dropped, in favour of Mothra and Ghidorah, and only Baragon made the final cut. Varan doesn't have that much luck in the film industry, but he has at least appeared in comic books and Monster Apocalypse. However, in recent times, he has been referenced in Godzilla Singular Point in the form of Godzilla Amphibia. Number 5. Mecha Godzilla. One of Godzilla's most memorable falls would be his mechanical doppelganger, Mecha Godzilla. The robot has had many origin stories, from an alien invader to a weapon built by the military to defeat Godzilla. The character is so popular that he is a member of Toho's Big Five. Debuting in 1974's Godzilla vs. Mecha Godzilla, he wore a Godzilla disguise and went under the name Fake Godzilla. He took on Anguirus by breaking his jaw King Kong style until the real Godzilla showed up and exposed his true identity as Mecha Godzilla. He was originally an alien war machine in the Showa period and had a whole series of weapons such as finger and toe missiles, rainbow-coloured space beams, 360 degrees head rotation, you name it. And in Terror of Mecha Godzilla, he could still fight even when the head was removed. Well, that's true for the other incarnations of the mech. Speaking of which, in the Heisei era onwards, he would be a military weapon built by the government to battle Godzilla. In Godzilla against Mechagodzilla of the Millennium period, Mechagodzilla, aka Kiru, was created over the skeleton of the original Gojira, but there was still some DNA within the bones. And at one point when Godzilla roars, this triggers Mechagodzilla to remember that it was once Godzilla, and as a result it goes completely berserk and ends up on the loose.